There is a small girl inside you, not a memory, a presence. She does not live in the past. She lives beneath your skin, behind your eyes, in the pause between what you feel and what you say. She once sang out loud, touched flowers like they were holy, and told the truth before she knew it could cost her love. But slowly they taught her to behave, to dim, to apologize for wanting too much, too loud, too sensitive, too honest. And so she became careful, she became pleasing, she became successful. But the mask didn't fit, and the smile started to ache, and somewhere between making dinner, returning texts, keeping the peace, she vanished. But not forever, because she's still there, that little girl, waiting at the gate of your soul, holding not your potential, but your permission. Your confidence was never lost. It was buried under layers of roles, guilt, and what you thought you had to be. And now you're tired, not just in your bones, but in your spirit, because you've been trying to earn what was already yours. So if something in you is whispering, if I don't come home to myself now, I may never, then this is for you. Because Carl Jung didn't just map the psyche, he gave us the keys to its return. And what I'll share with you in the next few minutes isn't advice. It's an invocation. If this speaks to your inner knowing, subscribe and stay close. Not because I need your clicks, but because you deserve a place that speaks your language, the language of symbols, soul, and sacred truth. Let's begin. Carl Jung did not set out to make you more confident. He set out to make you whole. And wholeness, true, grounded feminine wholeness, is the root from which confidence quietly blooms. What Jung saw in dream after dream, in soul after soul, was that we do not suffer from weakness. We suffer from forgetting. Forgetting who we are beneath the personas. Forgetting the voice of the soul in favor of the noise of the world. Forgetting that the unconscious, what most call shadow, chaos, mystery, is not an enemy. It is a mirror, a messenger, a mother. Let's begin with the inner child, not the sentimental idea of childhood, but the living symbol of your untouched essence. She is the one who felt first, who knew things without needing proof, who asked, why not, before you learned to ask, is it safe? In Jungian language, the inner child is the gatekeeper of the self, the deepest, truest part of you that cannot be performed, fixed, or destroyed. She is your original intuition, your unedited joy, your sacred rebellion. But here's what happens. You grow up in a world that says love must be earned, approval must be kept, and so you begin to trade authenticity for safety. You smile when it hurts. You say yes when your stomach screams no. You quiet your insight because someone once rolled their eyes. And every time you abandon yourself in these tiny, invisible ways, your inner child retreats a little deeper. Not to punish you, but to wait. She is not gone. She is hidden. And Jung taught us that what is hidden does not disappear. It moves. It becomes the unconscious. Now, the unconscious has a reputation. People hear the word and imagine something dark, chaotic, or frightening. But Jung insisted, the unconscious is not a monster. It is a treasure chest. It is where the forgotten parts of you go to sleep, dreaming of the day you will remember them. And how does it speak? Not with logic, not with bullet points. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in emotions that arrive without explanation, in the flicker of jealousy, the ache of longing, the fear that seems too big for the moment. That is the unconscious saying, look here, this is yours. You buried it, but it still breathes. One of the ways the unconscious speaks most powerfully is through what Jung called the shadow. Now, I want you to hear this carefully. The shadow is not the bad parts of you. It is the banished parts of you. Your anger, your ambition, your desires, your knowing, your wildness, your needs. All the things you were told were too much or not feminine or selfish got sent into the dark. But darkness, in Jungian thought, isn't evil. It is unseen potential. You feel it when you snap at your partner over something small. But no, it wasn't really about the dishes. You feel it when someone shines on stage and you think, who does she think she is? And then feel ashamed for thinking it. You feel it when you want more, but tell yourself you should just be grateful. That is not dysfunction. That is the shadow knocking on your door. Jung didn't want us to destroy the shadow. He wanted us to integrate it. To sit with the parts of ourselves we fear or deny and say, you belong. Which brings us to the center of Jung's work, individuation. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is not becoming a better version of yourself. It is remembering what is already there, and welcoming every piece of your psyche back to the table. Your light, your shadow, your doubt, your knowing, your rage, your radiance. Not to perform, not to perfect, but to belong to yourself again. Imagine this. You are carrying a backpack, and in it are every should you ever swallowed, every apology you made for existing, every mask you wore just to be liked. And one day, you realize the weight is not your fault, but it is your choice. So you stop, you open the backpack, you start removing one stone at a time. That, my friend, is individuation. And confidence? That's just what returns when the weight is no longer pulling you away from who you are. So no, we're not here to fix you. Jung would never insult your soul like that. We are here to see you, to welcome back what was lost, to listen to the whispers beneath your exhaustion and find the woman who remembers how to speak in the language of truth. She's waiting, and she's stronger than you've been taught to believe. Are you still with me? Then let's step into the place where this theory becomes personal, where these symbols take on skin and tears and memory, where your lived experience is the curriculum. Because now we move into the places where you've learned to survive, but not to shine. And it's time to bring her back. Let's talk about the silent places, the ones no one claps for, the quiet war you wage inside, between who you are and who you've learned to be. You know how to be everything for everyone. You show up, you soften, you solve, you carry the weight that no one sees. You overextend in conversations, relationships, workspaces, until there's not much left for you. And the world rewards you for it. They call it strength, they call it grace, they call it being a good woman. But if we listen just under the surface of all that praise, there's a question forming in your chest. Why do I feel so hollow? Carl Jung had a name for that feeling. He called it psychic dismemberment, when parts of the self have gone missing, cut off in the pursuit of what's acceptable, expected, or applauded. But let's bring that down to the ground. You wake up in the morning, already tense. You scroll through your phone and feel behind before you've even begun. You say yes to the favor, the meeting, the phone call, even though your body says no. You smile through the tightness in your chest. You over-explain when someone questions you. You say, I'm fine, because there's no room, no permission to say, I'm unraveling. Not in front of the kids, not at work, not with your partner, not even with yourself. This too is shadow. Not the angry parts, but the abandoned parts. Let's name what's really happening here. Because the issue is not that you're not enough, it's that you've given too much of yourself away to feel like you're allowed to be you. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to feel invisible in your own life. Let me show you how it plays out. There's the friendship where you're always the emotional anchor. She calls when she's drowning. But when you need support, she disappears. You feel used, then guilty for feeling used. So you suppress it. Tell yourself to be kind, to be spiritual, to be forgiving. But the ache doesn't go away. That ache is your inner child whispering, this isn't love, this is extraction. Or maybe it's your partner who says they love you but makes little jabs at your sensitivity. You're too emotional, you overthink everything, you take things too seriously. And so little by little you stop bringing your full self. You water yourself down. You hold back your intuition, your insight, your fire. Not because you want to, but because you've been trained to believe that being fully seen means being too much. Or maybe it goes deeper. Family. You grew up in a home where feelings were managed like threats, where silence was safer than truth, where your role was to be the peacekeeper, the caregiver, the good girl. And now, as a woman, you find yourself repeating that same script, swallowing your truth to keep others comfortable. Keeping the peace, even if it's at the cost of your own. These patterns are not your fault. They were inherited, encoded, passed down from women who were never given the space to belong to themselves. But the question isn't how you got here. The question is, will you stay here? Jung taught us that the unconscious uses discomfort to get our attention. The tiredness that no amount of sleep fixes. The joylessness in moments that are supposed to be enough. The rage that flares up, not because of what was said, but because of all the times you had to say nothing. These are not signs of failure. They are signals. The psyche has its own language, and if you listen, it will guide you home. But here's the thing. You can't hear that guidance when your life is too loud. when you are flooded with other people's needs, when you've been performing a version of yourself for so long, you no longer know what's real. You see, your inner child doesn't scream. She whispers, she sends feelings, she sends tears you can't explain. She sends that sudden desire to run away, to stop pretending, to be held, to be real. And when you ignore her, when you override those feelings with logic, shame, or to-do lists, you don't become stronger. You become split. Confidence, as Jung would define it, is not bravado. It is not smiling wider. It is not being louder. It is congruence, the quiet power of knowing that your outer life is aligned with your inner truth. But that requires something most people avoid. Honesty. Not performative honesty. Not speaking your truth because Instagram told you to. Real honesty. The kind where you admit that you've been abandoning yourself in the name of being good, being liked, being safe. The kind where you look at your life and ask, if I keep living like this, what part of me will be left? Let me ask you something. Who drains you? Whose name, when it appears on your phone, makes your stomach tighten? That's not drama, that's data. Or this. Where in your life do you feel small, even though you're doing everything right? Where are you performing rather than belonging? Because when you abandon yourself long enough, the world begins to reflect that abandonment back to you. Your time gets taken for granted, your insight gets dismissed, your boundaries get crossed. And it's not because you're weak, it's because you've been taught to silence the parts of you that say, no more. Not this, I want more, I am worthy. You were trained to distrust your own fire, to flinch at your own truth. But let me say this clearly. That fire inside you, that ache, that longing, that frustration is not dysfunction. It is guidance. It is your shadow calling you back. It is your inner child saying, I'm still here and I still remember who we are. So let's stop pathologizing your sensitivity, your exhaustion, your emotional truth. Let's name it for what it really is. Wisdom. Wisdom that's been trapped under decades of performance. The moment you begin to listen, to actually listen, to what your body, your heart, your dreams are telling you, something ancient begins to stir. A remembering, a reckoning, a return. And it's not dramatic. It doesn't happen with fireworks. It happens quietly. In the first no you say without apology. In the first night you sleep without dread. In the first moment you look in the mirror and see not a flaw, but a woman coming home to herself. This is where it begins. Not with a performance, but with a pause. Are you ready for that? Then stay with me. Because in the next minutes, we stop naming the pain and begin reclaiming the power. Not the kind that needs to prove anything, but the kind that makes your inner child finally whisper, thank you for remembering me. Let's slow down now. Not because we're done, but because we're entering sacred territory. You've met the girl inside you. You've heard her echo beneath the noise. And you've started to remember the weight you carry is not yours alone, but inherited, expected, and worn like armor. Now comes the turning. Not a performance, not a reinvention, but a reclamation. The return of what you gave away too soon. Let me say this clearly. Your feminine self-confidence is not something you build. It is something you reclaim by remembering that you were never broken, only buried. Buried under roles, under sacrifice, under the exhausting need to be likable, agreeable, digestible. But Carl Jung gave us the tools to begin this return. Not as a self-help project, but as a sacred psychological act. Let's begin with something deceptively simple. Presence. Not the kind of presence that looks still on the outside, but the kind that trembles with honesty on the inside. Take a breath, right now. Not to calm down, but to come in. Feel your body. Notice where it tightens, where it closes, where it longs. That is not weakness. That is conversation. That is your unconscious speaking. And the first act of reclamation is not to fix it, but to listen. Jung called this kind of listening active imagination. It's not a fantasy. It's a bridge. A way to sit across from the forgotten parts of yourself and say, I see you. Let's try it now. Close your eyes, unless you're driving, of course, and imagine her, the little girl you once were. Not the photos, not the forced smiles, but her. Raw, unfiltered, before she was told to behave. What is she doing? Is she hiding? Is she reaching out? Does she trust you? Now ask her gently, what do you need from me now? Don't rush the answer. She may not speak in words. She may give you an image, a color, a feeling. Perhaps it's space, perhaps it's rest, perhaps it's rage that never had a voice. Whatever she brings you, it is not weakness, it is sacred, because when she speaks, you are no longer guessing at your worth. You are rooted in it. And when you honor her, your confidence is no longer conditional. It's no longer about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself. And choosing yourself always begins here, boundaries. Let's talk about them. Not as a technique, but as a sacrament. Every time you say no to what drains you, you say yes to the girl within. You tell her, you don't have to disappear anymore. Boundaries are not walls. They are thresholds. They mark where your truth begins. And trust me, your body knows where they've been crossed. That tightening in your chest when you agree to something you don't want. That fatigue after a conversation that took too much. That irritability that seems to come from nowhere. These are not flaws. Your unconscious saying, this is not aligned, please protect me. So here is your practice. Before you say yes again, pause. Ask yourself, does this nourish me or empty me? And whatever your body says, honor it, even if your voice shakes, even if it disappoints someone, even if it scares you, because every time you override your truth to stay in someone's good graces, you send your inner child back into exile. But every time you choose her, even quietly, she returns with power you forgot you had. Now let's go deeper. Jung taught us about projection, the way we unconsciously assign our hidden qualities to others. The woman you envy, she holds your repressed confidence. The person who triggers you, they carry a trait you've disowned. This is not judgment. This is invitation. Look closely. That friend who intimidates you with her boldness, what is she showing you about your own silenced voice? That partner who dismisses your emotions, what part of you has been taught to dismiss them too? Projection is not about blame. It's about seeing yourself through the mirror of your relationships. It's about asking, what is this showing me about me? Not as shame, but as illumination. Because if your inner child was once told, you're too much, she's so dramatic, why are you so emotional? She didn't just shrink, she started projecting her fire onto others. And the work now is to take it back, to say that boldness lives in me, that desire lives in me, that freedom lives in me. And when you do that, you begin what Jung called integration. You don't become someone new, you become someone whole. You are no longer scattered between masks, roles, and expectations. You become a center. You don't beg for respect, you emanate it. You don't prove your worth, you embody it. You stop chasing the world's crumbs of validation. Because you are now full on the inside. But I'll be honest with you, this path is not always pretty. Sometimes reclamation looks like grieving what you tolerated. Sometimes it's crying over the years you stayed silent. Sometimes it's feeling rage and not shaming yourself for it. That is integration, and it is sacred. The shadow does not shrink when you judge it. It transforms when you welcome it. So ask yourself this now, what part of me have I made wrong but secretly need? Maybe it's the part of you that wants more. Maybe it's the part of you that's tired of pretending. Maybe it's the part that's not nice, but is honest. Welcome her. Let her sit beside your inner child. Let them talk. Because when the one who remembers meets the one who was silenced, you no longer need to perform confidence. You radiate it. Not by being loud, not by being tough, but by being true. And truth, my dear, is irresistible. So take a breath. Feel what's rising in you, the ache, the clarity, the courage, and know this, you don't have to become worthy. You only have to stop abandoning what already is. Because when your inner child sees you stand, sees you say no, sees you rest without guilt, or cry without apology, she finally believes you're safe to come home to. And when she comes home, everything changes. Your walk, your voice, your boundaries, your joy. This is feminine self-confidence, not armor, not performance, but presence. And in that presence, you are more than powerful, you are whole. Are you ready to take this deeper? Then stay with me. Because the final piece is not about what you reclaim, it's about what you become. There is a moment, soft and quiet, where something in you exhales, not because life is perfect, but because you've stopped leaving yourself behind. That moment is now. Your confidence isn't a performance, it's not louder than the doubt or shinier than the pain. It is still and rooted and whole. It comes from knowing who you are, even when no one claps, even when someone leaves. Even when the world tells you to try harder, give more, smile anyway. Because now you remember the truth that Carl Jung whispered through decades of work. You do not need to become anything. You only need to reclaim everything you are. Your power is not in being everything to everyone, it's in being all of yourself, with no apology. So take one sacred act today, one boundary that honors your peace, one breath that welcomes your emotion, 1 hour where you belong only to yourself, because your inner child is watching. And when she sees you choose her, again and again, something ancient dances in her bones. And when she dances, you radiate a kind of confidence no one can manufacture and no one can steal. Not the world, not a partner, not your past. So if this journey stirred something in you, if you feel the quiet pull to keep going, I invite you to make this a space for your soul. Leave a comment and tell me, what part of you are you ready to welcome home? Subscribe not because you should, but because you're ready to walk this deeper path with others who feel as much as you do. Click the bell, not as a task but as a declaration. I choose to hear what speaks to my truth. Together we're not building a following, we're weaving a return, one woman at a time. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening, and above all, thank you for remembering who you are. Because when your inner child dances, the whole world feels your light, and then nothing is more powerful than that. The journey continues, and I'll be right here, waiting. Until next time.